Do you love TV shows? We do too. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Anna, and we're the hosts of We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast hosted by us, a married couple with an endless love for TV.
Whether you're searching for a new favorite series or ready to revisit an old classic, we're here to guide you through an infinite world of TV shows.
Each episode, we watch and discuss the pilot for shows while also sharing personal stories that parallel the storyline.
So if you're tired of endlessly scrolling and not sure what to watch next, tune in and let us do the searching for you.
We Judge a Show by Its Pilot. New episodes every Tuesday and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Your new favorite show is just one click away. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our pod.
Hello. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. Another Monday. Today's Tuesday. Today's Tuesday.
Today's Tuesday. I know.
Almost as if yesterday didn't happen.
Okay.
I'm just being stupid. So we are, I guess it's very much on par with what we're doing today.
Yeah.
We are going to the Sanger tonight to see Mamma Mia. We saw it on a cruise ship, and it was a full production. It wasn't, it was a
Allure or Harmony, one of the big ships.
Yeah, it was one of the big ships where they have full Broadway productions. And I've seen the movie, and of course, we're both very familiar with the music of ABBA.
Of course.
So, yeah, I'm excited to see it kind of in an environment. It had nothing to do with the talent level of the people on the cruise ship. They were great, and they were awesome, and there are plenty of extremely talented people who maybe didn't make the cut on Broadway, and they have to find work elsewhere. And I mean, that feels like constant work. As long as you want to stay on the ship, you can keep being in the production.
And I definitely feel like they are performers who probably did try out for Broadway, and this is just an option for them to get that kind of experience. So, I mean, they were really good.
I would just like to see it in an environment where we're not on a cruise ship, more or less like the people in the audience around us.
Yes.
More so, and that was really more not with Mamma Mia, but when we saw Grease.
Oh gosh, yes.
Because people are very familiar with the movie Grease, but the musical is very different.
Oh, totally different.
And songs are in different places. There are different
songs.
Yeah, the
characters have different names too.
I think people also don't realize that when people make movie musicals based on a Broadway play, they cut songs out of the movie, and so people were just like, this is so different than the movie, and I'm just like, yeah, it's the original Broadway. They weren't the T-Birds, they were the Golden Palace Boys. It's just those
It was Sandy Dombrowski, not Sandy Olsen.
Yeah, she was not Australian. That was for Olivia Newton-John. And she was just from another town in America. We Go Together is the Act 1 finale song. So I mean, it's just. Yeah, I mean, I really liked it still, but it was just interesting.
But we knew that it was different versus what you were saying is a lot of people in the audience didn't realize that they were different, and they were all complaining about it. So we're like, oh.
But Mamma Mia, I have to say, I've seen the movie a few times now. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the movie. I felt like it was made during an era during the... We're girls and we're quirky. It was just kind of that era of movies.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
And I felt like it was a little too forced with Meryl Streep and Christine Baranski and Julie Walters, who are all amazing actresses. I love Christine Baranski. I love Julie Walters. Billy Elliot's one of my favorite movies. So, I mean, I love her in that. Yeah. But I felt like they were trying a little too hard to... Oh, we're natural. We're friends. We've known each other for so long. Everything's so natural between us. I feel like they just tried a little too hard to make it that way rather than just letting them just act. I don't know. Maybe it's just all in my head. I haven't seen the movie in a really long time, so maybe it was just during the era of my life where I just wasn't into it.
I will say that I never saw it.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever fully watched the movie. I mean, I might have seen a scene or something, but I've never watched it from start to finish. My mom watched it when we were coming back from Europe.
That's right.
One time. And my mom's beef with the whole movie in and of itself was like, she just couldn't believe that she just didn't know who the father of her daughter was.
Yeah. Well,
like my mom was very annoyed about that.
Yeah. I think that might be like a generational thing, because I think the whole point was like she had been with these three guys in a very short period of time.
Well, oh, for
and
sure.
And that's why, but I get what you're saying.
I mean, well...
I get what she's saying.
Yes,
yeah.
And it wasn't so much that she was a prude, but she was more like, you know, like,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess she was also going, well, I guess she was with them like bam, 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 night after night, you know, like, and then so she wouldn't know. But anyway, that was my mom's beef with it. So it was funny to hear that, because my mom loves ABBA. I mean, I used to have the ABBA soundtrack on 8-track.
Oh yeah.
And I used to dance to it in the living room at home.
Yeah, my mom had ABBA gold hits on cassette, and she played it all the time.
Oh yeah.
My mom was a big Motown girl, a big disco girl, so she, I grew up listening to all that. I would say I was very lucky. I grew up listening to some really great music.
Yeah, so definitely us going to see Mamma Mia, music-wise, to me is very somewhat fitting to what we are about to talk about today.
Oh yeah, so we are continuing February. I keep months this year. This year has started off so crazy,
and it's been so long.
I keep thinking, I think someone was like, I think there was a meme who was like, today it's January 74th. It's just like, because January seemed like it went on forever. Which, usually isn't the case. Time is usually flying. But yeah, it already feels like we should be like 4 months into this year, and we're only halfway through February. So yeah, we're recording pretty close to our release date today, because this episode's going to come out on Friday. So this episode's going to come out on Valentine's Day. Which, I guess, there's a lot of love in this movie. There's a lot of love and romance in this. It's a show that we had never watched before. I had kind of heard of it, just in the context of, like, I knew people that were in it.
Yeah.
And I knew, like, the basic plot of it. And also, so the show that we're continuing February, short-lived TV shows for the shortest month of the year. And, we had never watched the show before, but I had heard of it. And then so it's all kind of about, like, the show itself is all kind of about, like, the early days of, like, hip hop and late 70s New York. And there is a very, very great episode of Drunk History.
Oh, yeah.
Where Questlove talks about the beginning of hip hop in the late 70s. And the scratching. And I remember, because I didn't know these people's names until Questlove talked about it, about Grandmaster Flash and Kool Herc and all of them. So, like, when these characters were introduced, I'm like, I know this. Like, I get this.
Yes.
Like, and that was kind of like it was really a lot of fun. So the show we're doing today is The Get Down. It is a show that was created by Baz Luhrmann. We're going to get into all that in a second. And before we do all of that, talk about the pilot and do what we do, talk about our stories, which have been, I've been doing a lot of editing the last few weeks, and our stories have gotten a little crazier over the last few episodes. I think maybe we're going to tone it down just a little bit.
Why?
Tone it down. Like, I don't think we're going to get as personal as we normally do, but
you never know.
This was a really, you never know. We never know. I talk about stuff that I had
because we don't plan our conversations.
Right. That's also very true. The last episode, I had no intention of talking about the woman that moved in with me. I had no intention of telling that story. I'm like, it fits. It fits, and it's more of my lore. So
more of the Jeff lore.
All right, so Anna's going to give us some episode and series information.
The Get Down. Where there is ruin, there is hope for treasure. That was the pilot. The Get Down was an American musical drama series that premiered on Netflix on August 12th, 2016, with 6 episodes. A part 2 was released on April 7th, 2017, with 5 episodes, but the series was ultimately canceled after part 2 premiered. The Get Down ran for 1 season with a total of 11 episodes. The series was created by Baz Luhrmann and Stephen Adly Guirgis. Guirgis, I'm not sure. Yeah. Is an American playwright best known for his Broadway play Between Riverside and Crazy, which won the 2015 Pulitzer Prize for Drama. Lerman is a well-known American filmmaker whose works include Strictly Ballroom, Romeo plus Juliet, Moulin Rouge, and most recently, Elvis. The series is set in the Bronx in the late 70s and follows the lives of a group of teenagers with big dreams during the rise of hip-hop, disco, and the underground art scene. Each episode begins with MC Books, a famous rapper who was rapping his life story to a crowd during a concert in 1996. The cast includes Justice Smith as Zeke Figueroa, the wordsmith, Shameik Moore as Curtis, also known as Shaolin Fantastic or Shao, Harazin F. Guardiola as Mylene Cruz, an aspiring singer and Zeke's love interest, Skyland Brooks as Ronald Ra Kipling, Zeke's best friend, Tremaine Miles Jr. as Miles Boo Boo Kipling, Ra's younger brother.
Your favorite.
My favorite. Yahya Abdul Mateen II as Cadillac Caldwell, the disco prince of New York. Jimmy Smits as Francisco Papafuerte Cruz, Mylene's uncle and South Bronx political boss. Jaden Smith as Marcus Dizzy Kipling, a graffiti artist, and Ra and Boo Boo's older brother. The recurring cast includes David Diggs, Giancarlo Esposito, Stephanie Martin, Shirley Rodriguez, Sabrina Guevara, Kevin Corrigan, Lilias White, and Mamadou Afi. The series received critical acclaim and was praised by audience for its music, authentic set design, wardrobe, and a great cast. However, in true Baz Luhrmann fashion, the budget was deemed too expensive to continue producing and was ultimately canceled by Netflix. The Get Down remains to this day as Netflix's most expensive series, costing $120 million. And you can currently watch the entire series on Netflix. And yes, you can see how much money was spent.
You can see every penny. I mean, we watched the pilot, but we just kind of started watching it just because we got into it. We started watching a couple more episodes, and you see every dollar and penny that was put into that show. I mean, the set, the wardrobe, it feels just authentically 1977. It's so great. So this seems like a show that we would both watch. It's really interesting when we watch a show that, like, I can immediately tell that would be a show that we would both be into. But for some reason, it just slipped through the cracks. I'm looking at when this premiered. That would have been like prime work travel for you in August 12th, 2016.
Oh, yeah.
You would have been too busy. That was when we first met.
Yeah, I was going to say I was still definitely traveling a ton. So, yeah.
And then April 7th, 2017, I just moved in with you. And yeah, we were probably watching like Scream Queen. We were probably just watching like a lot of other shows, and it just slipped through the cracks. And also, when a show gets canceled after one season, I tend to have this bias of like, well, I guess it wasn't that good. Like that's always what I end up doing. It also just
doesn't start populating in your suggested shows.
Right.
Like I feel like what Netflix or
that's true.
The Vibes want us to watch is what keeps popping up. And now especially they have like the top 10 watched today, the top watched this month, like keeps popping up. So those are the things that are in our like line of sight. Yeah. So I don't think Netflix did that back then. Maybe it did and I didn't notice it.
Right.
But who knows?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so this is New York, the late 70s. I mean, New York was such a starting point for so many different things. It really is like, it really, people are always like, city of dreams, and you're always like, yeah, whatever. But New York, at least at this point, was kind of this like magical place that you would go to if you were an outcast, an artist, aspiring. You either went to LA or you went to New York. And it was kind of like if you were a little bit more on the edgier side, you would go to New York because it was very much considered to be this very like this hub of creativity and art, and it was the foundation of three really huge genres of music. More than that, obviously, but like
totally
during this era specifically, it was the era of hip hop, the beginning of disco, and the beginning of punk. You have Club 54. for the disco, you have all the underground parties for hip hop, and then you have CBGB for the punks.
Yeah.
So if you were, let's say you were, so if we were teenagers in the late 70s or early 20s, living in New York in the late 70s, would you be a hip hop girl, a disco girl, or a punk girl?
It's hard because oh my gosh, that is really a difficult question, because I will go with initially disco.
Okay.
Because, and again, I grew up with, my brother was very 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Disco was his era. So I was definitely influenced by disco when I was very young, because that's what we'll listen to. I will also say I was influenced young by my sister, who probably listened to rock, punk, that kind of stuff. So I was very attuned to that genre of music developing as well.
Yeah.
And then I grew up with hip hop.
Right.
So that was the late 70s, early 80s, and the rise of that. So it's hard for me to pick, but if I was a teenager, I would definitely go with disco, because
you love to dance.
I love to dance, and it was what I would play in the living room and dance to with an 8-track going on the stereo, and definitely remember that. So
I could totally see.
I will definitely say disco.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think my default answer would be punk, just because of how I was when I was a teenager. But that was during that era, like of when I was a teenager, when I was growing up. It was in the 90s. It was a lot of hip hop, R&B, alternative rock. That's really what I kind of listened to a lot. And then, but when I got to be like a teenager, late 90s, early 2000s, that was kind of the rise of like alternative punk, pop punk, emo, all of that. So like, I feel like when we were watching the pilot, I would have had a blast at those hip hop parties.
Oh,
like when I saw, like, I was like, I would have been in heaven, because like watching people freestyle, I think that's so cool. And I've never, other than like when I would go to festivals, I've never really been to like a hip hop show before.
Okay.
So I remember when it was, it wasn't 50, it was Ludacris. And I remember like, I listened to Ludacris. I really liked Ludacris. And so I remember when he played at Voodoo Fest, and when he played on stage, it was like an experience. I had never experienced a live show like that before, because it was a genre I'd never really seen live before. And I was just like, this is awesome. Like, I was just like, this is so cool. So I think initially I would say punk, but I would have like probably switched in between punk and hip hop. And they were both kind of like outcast genres, so I can definitely, disco was definitely in the mainstream at this point, and hip hop and punk were kind of on the outskirts. So I could see myself being a little bit of both, but I would probably lean more towards punk, because just thinking about seeing like, thinking in the late 70s, go to CBGB and seeing like the Talking Heads perform for the first time, and the Ramones, and Patti Smith and Debbie Harry, and all of these like amazing, like Lou Reed and the Police, like all of these like amazing punk and also rock bands like perform for the first time in front of like 30 people or 40 people. Like, how epic would that be? But it's also equally as epic seeing like Grandmaster Flash perform for the first time or something like that.
What would you categorize Childish Gambino?
Childish Gambino is hip hop, but it is kind of considered to be like what is now referred to as like alternative hip hop.
Okay.
Because he spans genres. It's not just hip hop. There's a lot of like R&B. There's a lot of like rock.
That's true.
There's like a pop element to it. He's. I was
gonna say that concert was amazing. Like, I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
Because I got those tickets for you for your birthday. I had heard the songs, but had never made the actual connection.
Right.
And then seeing the entire set together was awesome.
It was probably Childish Gambino is probably going down as like my favorite concert experience I've ever had, just because I was the first time in my life where I was truly starstruck.
Oh yeah.
Because it's Donald Glover, and he's like my favorite, and his music is very unique, very one of a kind, and it was unlike any concert I'd ever been to.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of like that's more or less like seeing Joan Jett live was like a dream come true, and it was amazing. But like at the end of the day, it really is just kind of her playing the guitar and singing. There's not like much showmanship, I would say.
Absolutely, I agree, because she was just on stage singing, and not that was bad.
No,
but
she sounded. still have the videos. She sounded incredible.
There was no like show to it.
Other than the woman that I was watching with the cape that was losing her mind and kicking in the air. I was watching her throughout all of Heart. I was watching her throughout all when Heart was playing. I was like, she is the show for me.
Yes.
She was hilarious. So I'd probably like go to CBGB, like see a show, and then go to one of the hip hop parties, and then go. I'd probably like do one of those in like one night, 2 of those in one night. But disco, I mean. The music itself is good, but like the fashion and the dancing and the environment, it's just not my thing. Is particularly the fashion, it's just not my thing. But I could totally see you in one of those flowy dresses with your hair all done, and you're like going to 54, and you're like, I'll meet up with you later. You're going to your little punk bar.
Gotcha.
Going to your little punk place.
You're going to CBGB.
Yeah. So speaking of music, this is going to be a very music heavy episode. So Baz Luhrmann, I mean, his movies, you can't talk about his movies without talking about the soundtracks, the scores. I mean, you have Romeo plus Juliet, which, I mean, has Fatboy Slim and Radiohead and all these great. Moulin Rouge, which is like, I mean, just epic with how many different songs are in there. I'm going to be a little honest, I think Moulin Rouge is a little overrated, but the stage musical was amazing, so I kind of can't say that anymore. Elvis was the same. It was a good movie, but it was just like stuff we already knew kind of stuff. I didn't hate that movie, I didn't love that movie, it was just a good movie. So what would you say are some of your favorite movie soundtracks? Or movie scores? I mean, because that's always a big category for me.
Well, early on in like my life, I'm gonna say this one is a weird one. It's like the Breakfast Club soundtrack.
Oh, that's not a weird one. That soundtrack is awesome.
Yeah, so I love that because I actually had the album.
Yeah,
and I used to dance to that one in my living room all the time. I could just put it on and just dance to it. I will also go on record and say that I do love Moulin Rouge and the entire Moulin Rouge soundtrack because it has a very special memory for me with my mom.
Aww.
My CD collection, like about a month or two before, maybe it had been before, a little bit before that, my CD collection had been stolen out of my car so probably around 2005, like November. And so I got my new Jeep in 2006, December 2006. So I actually had an actual CD player in my vehicle.
Nice.
So I had started buying new CDs, and Moulin Rouge was one of them. And so I was slowly building up my CD collection. So when I moved home and drove back that summer with my mom, I still didn't have that many CDs yet. And Moulin Rouge was one that took me back home. And my mom actually really loved it. Like, she was just like, this music is so good. Mm-hmm. And she was like, play that one again.
Aww,
like, and so, yeah, so we played the Moulin Rouge soundtrack, one, because it's just so long, it would just last a while. So that one is special to me. I'm trying to think of other ones, but Breakfast Club, I will say early on, was probably one that just sticks with me because I really remember the music from it. And it just was part of my era of growing up. Right. What about you?
Well, I have a little listy.
I'm
so
gonna probably have some more, but
okay.
You go.
So I would say when I first started getting when I first really started getting into music, I would say when I was in like maybe 5th or 6th grade, when I really started like kind of a lot like how I talk about how when I started having favorite shows, it was more than just stuff that my parents were listening to or stuff that my sister was listening to or a friend of mine was listening to. It was when I started like getting my own taste in music, soundtracks were kind of like my shortcut into all of that, and it really just, my dad had a lot of really great soundtracks growing up, and it really kind of made me fall in love with like the era of like 60s and 70s pop, rock, all of that. But I would say the first soundtrack I truly remember falling in love with was the soundtrack to a little 90s teen gem called Angus.
Oh, okay.
Which just kind of the artists that were featured on there kind of before they were really famous. It was Weezer was on the soundtrack, Green Day was on the soundtrack, Gin Blossoms.
Those are all your people.
Gin Blossoms. There were some other ones, and Love Spit Love, which is such an underrated great band from the 90s, and it really made me fall in love. That was what kind of made me fall in love with like all alternative rock and punk rock and stuff like that. That was kind of like my first taste of it. And then a couple of movies that kind of started my love of movie soundtracks was the Now and Then soundtrack.
Oh.
Because I mean that's just such a great kind of like pop. You know, you got Knock 3 Times, you got Sugar Sugar, you got all these great,
oh my gosh,
memorable
yes.
songs and All Right Now and all of that. And I loved that movie, so I mean, it just made sense. One of the early ones, and it was not the musical, because I think a lot of people forget that it was originally a movie, was Newsies. I really loved that soundtrack. If anyone's never seen the original movie, it's like one of Christian Bale's first movies. Max Casella's in it, Robert Duvall and Anne Margaret. It's a great movie. It's a little slow, but it's a great movie. And so a little later in middle school was when I discovered Dazed and Confused, which is like the most epic 2-disc.
I had that one.
2-disc epic like soundtrack, and it was just something that I listened to constantly.
Those songs remind me of my brother and sister.
Yeah.
That was the time when my brother graduated from high school.
That was like that was the soundtrack that I probably listened to the most kind of in my early teen years. And then another movie, so there's a category of movies where like the movie was whatever, but the soundtrack was like amazing.
Okay.
And for me, that's Queen of the Damned.
Oh, wow.
So that movie was, I mean, I would say mid at best, like the movie itself, but the soundtrack is just, I mean, it's like Korn, System of a Down, Disturbed, Static X, like all these like really great metal bands that like weren't as popular at the time, but like the rise of alternative metal kind of happened in the early 2000s, and that was really just that era. It was also... Queen of the Damned was possibly the first R-rated movie that I saw, like, as a legal 17-year-old. Maybe I was a little younger. I don't remember. And then the last one, it's probably like the last soundtrack that I really got into, because I feel like nowadays movie soundtracks really aren't relevant anymore, unless it's like a musical or something, or like a bio movie about like a former artist. But the 2000s was really a great era for soundtracks. It was kind of the last era of soundtracks, at least in my opinion, and that is Garden State.
Oh, okay.
That was a lot of indie music. That was a lot of the music that I got into when I got a little older, into my 20s, when I started to mellow out a little bit. It has The Shins. It has Iron and Wine. It has a random song by Colin Hay, which is really good. It has Simon and Garfunkel on there, which is really great. Like, just a lot of really great music. And, you know, I think there was an era where, like, just about everyone my age had a copy of the Garden State soundtrack. It was just one of those kind of movies where the movie was really good, but the music made it better, which I think when you have certain types of movies that don't necessarily have, like, that unique of a plot, I feel like the soundtrack can really kind of elevate it into something a little bit more memorable. What immediately comes to mind is The Big Chill for that. Like, movies that, like, you know, maybe wouldn't be that great, but like it really kind of played to the nostalgia.
Yes.
So do you have some more?
I did.
Okay.
And it's amazing that you just referenced The Big Chill, because if one of my high school friends, Lisa, is actually listening, that is a soundtrack we listen to almost every other day going to high school.
Yeah, my dad had it on vinyl. I used to listen to it all the time.
The other one, and I'm a little surprised we both didn't mention this initially, is Stand By Me.
Duh.
Yeah, both of our favorites.
Yeah.
So I had a few more that I was just going through lists and trying to think of, like, what are the ones that, like, I know I played a bajillion times, either on cassette or on record, or, you know, maybe even 8-track. Less Than Zero was...
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. This is Back of the School Bus, freshman year of high school, Footloose.
Oh, yeah.
Back and front of the cassette. It was just, without a doubt, played almost every single day. I could play that today and still love it.
Oh, yeah.
Reality Bites. Just loved that
such
music.
Such a good one, yeah.
Singles.
I was like, as soon as you said Reality Bites, I'm like, she's about to say Singles.
The other kind of going along with Breakfast Club would be Pretty in Pink.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also had, and this is just, I think my brother had it on 8-track, Saturday Night Fever.
That is probably the most epic.
Yeah.
One of the most popular soundtracks.
So lots of just Bee Gees and all of those songs. I mean, I could have added more to this list, but those are ones that I distinctly remember having the actual cassette, record, 8-track, and then maybe even in the future, you know, CD of. But just songs that, even if they weren't popular, like on the radio, there were songs on there that I just loved. Like, so
I have one more. It was a sound, and we've talked about this movie before, so it's just, I have to mention it. It was a soundtrack I had on cassette that I can't believe my parents let me own, that I listened to constantly. Grease 2.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Loved. I mean, you got to remember, when I was a kid, it's like now, it's like I could skip through the songs now and just watch the movie because I love the movie so much. But back then, I loved the songs. Like, they were just fun. They didn't really mean anything other than the constant double entendres and sexual innuendo. Other than that, that all went over my head because I was like 8.
My other one, I will say, is Purple Rain.
Oh, yeah.
I had that one. That one was like the big kind of controversial one of the era. So, yeah.
And then, like, I just have a couple for like scores, like favorite movie scores. I have the original Suspiria. I love the music for that. It's by a prog rock band named Goblin, who did a bulk of like the Italian horror movies of the late 70s. They did the score for all of them, and it's very like synth heavy, and it's so good. And I will play some of these movie scores at work on my playlist, and like some of the other guys are just like, what is this? And I'll like tell them, I'm like, oh. And then like Jordan has added so many movie scores because of me, because it's just like, he's like, I really like this. And I'm like, yeah, I love movie scores. There are times where like I will go through my phases where I will just listen to like the score to Hellraiser, which is another one of my favorite, probably my favorite movie score of all time is Hellraiser, which is, a lot of people don't realize Hellraiser. I think people just think like gore or like body horror. The first two Hellraisers are two of the greatest horror movies ever made. And they are so good. And the first Hellraiser is, I know I'm talking about horror movies, big surprise. The first Hellraiser is like a tragic love story, and then the second Hellraiser is like a tragic fairy tale story. A lot of people don't get that. I think a lot of people just remember Pinhead and the hooks and the torture and stuff like that, because that's what
you see.
That's what the sequels are famous for. They just kind of lost all of their substance and just became torture porn, which is what we're most familiar with. But the first two Hellraisers, I would recommend that to, even if you don't watch horror movies. Like, I would recommend that because they are just fantastic movies. The scores are great. And then another one I have is Candyman, the original Candyman.
Oh, okay.
That score is like, that's another one that I will just put on in my car and I'll just listen to on my way to work. And then an obvious one, probably the most obvious one, but it's just the best, is Jurassic Park.
Yes, and so it actually goes with the Get Down because of Mamadou and
Justice Smith.
Justice Smith.
Yep.
They were together in Dominion.
Yeah.
And then Justice Smith was in Fallen Kingdom and Dominion.
Yes.
And then, yeah.
And Justice Smith was also recently in a movie called I Saw the TV Glow, which is an insane movie. Not a horror movie, but just a very crazy movie. Really good, though. It's on Max.
Yeah.
All right, so my last question for you, and maybe you don't have an answer, maybe you do so not necessarily like it doesn't necessarily have to be like romantic, but there is the kind of the main storyline of the pilot is Zeke, Justice Smith's character, is going to great lengths to impress Mylena, who's his love interest.
Yes.
And he goes through, I'm going to talk about it in our plot summary, he goes to great lengths to impress this girl that he is absolutely madly in love with. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone that you were in love with or that you're interested in romantically, but have you ever gone to great lengths to impress someone?
I'm trying to think. I mean, maybe through like a work interview or, I mean, like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. What about you? Let me think about it.
So I have one story that pops in my brain. I'm sure I did plenty of being a boy. I'm sure I did plenty of dumb stuff to try and impress a girl. You know, stuff that I thought was cool, but looking back on it, I'm like, you were just a boy and you didn't know. It was, I think it was Game Grumps that talked about this, and they articulated it in a way that, like, I understood it. It's like when you're a certain age and you develop feelings for a girl, as a boy, I can't speak from the perspective of a girl, but
okay,
from the perspective of a boy, when you're young and you're first starting to become attracted to the opposite sex, it's like you don't know, it's like you haven't hit puberty yet, you don't exactly know what to do with it, and you're just like, you think like just impressing a girl just means doing something like that will just get her attention, not necessarily something that would like actually impress her. So when I got a little older, I began understanding like, oh no, you have to do something that's like actually impressive. Like you have to do something that would like actually impress specifically the girl that you like. So there was a girl when I was in 9th grade, there was a girl that I had a crush on, and we were friends. We would talk on Instant Messenger all the time.
Oh.
And she was, at this point in time, I did not smoke cigarettes. I was not a cigarette smoker yet.
Okay.
But she was, I mean, like everyone smoked cigarettes back then, but like she was a cigarette smoker. And I thought, I was like, okay, like if I get this girl a pack of cigarettes, maybe she will like me. Like maybe that will like impress her.
Okay.
So I kind of found out what kind of cigarettes she smoked. So this was back in the day before cigarettes were behind the counter.
Oh, okay.
So back in the day, when you went to a grocery store, there would kind of be like, kind of like how Walmart is. Some Walmarts are where there's like
the candy,
the case of cigarettes, but there's no like case. There's no like glass case. They're not covered. It's like it's like a aisle. It's like where like the candy is, but there would be like a big, in the center of a grocery store, there would be like the cigarette aisle, but it would be like where the checkout line is.
Gotcha.
And if you were sneaky enough, you could steal a pack of cigarettes. So I went to, I can incriminate myself just a little bit because it's so long ago. I went to Albertsons, the one that's across the street from where I work.
Okay.
And I rode my bike there, and I stole a pack of cigarettes, and I brought it to school the next day, and I was like, hey, what kind of cigarettes do you smoke? And she was like, I knew the answer, but I was like, what kind of cigarettes do you smoke? She was like, told me. And then like I'd handed her the cigarettes, and then she was just like, oh, where'd you get these? And I was just like, oh, I found them. Or I tried to like, I wasn't going to say I stole them, but I was just like, oh, I found them. And I just figured, she was like, how did you find these? I'm just like, she's just asking way too many questions. And I was like, I don't know. I found them like on the ground on my way to school or something like that. And she was just like,
you're weird.
Oh, well, I mean, if these were on the ground, like, I don't want them. You can throw them away. And not knowing that like they were fresh cigarettes that were only in my pocket. Like They weren't, I didn't find them on the ground. So she gave them back to me. And then I was just like, with this pack of, I didn't smoke. I was with this pack of cigarettes, and I was just like, well, that didn't work. Just kind of like, well, that didn't fare too well. And so I think I probably gave like the cigarettes to like my stepbrother or something. But yeah, that was That's probably like my main story that I can think of, because I'm gonna say, and this wasn't like it was just so easy for me to get a girl. I just didn't do the whole. Once I got reached a certain age, I was like, if the girl doesn't like me for who I am, then I don't want to like waste my time with her. So I was very much like myself around girls, and I didn't try to impress them. I would do like jokes and bits and stuff like that. Like, you know, I'm a goofy person, so I would do that. But other than that, like, I never really went out of my way to impress a girl, because it would usually end up like how it did with that last story, where it just ended up being for nothing and ended up being worthless. Like, I'm sure I tried like some comedy bit that I got from like a TV show that I like repeated the joke or something like that. I'm sure I did stuff like that, but I don't think I ever like went to great lengths to other than that one time. I don't think I went to great lengths to impress a girl, and if I did, like, I don't remember it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, I mean, maybe just talking sports to guys who I thought if they like sports. I think that was also just kind of it. It's like you try to find out what that person was into or liked, or what their interests were, and you would try to match that in some way. But I don't think I've ever really gone out of my way, because I think I've always had the mindset, like, if you just don't like me, you're not gonna like me.
Same. Yeah.
So I also just, I don't think I had like the finances to ever do anything crazy anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think I changed my clothes or bought people anything. Like, I cannot think of a way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I've probably have done something that I thought would have impressed. I mean, I could say with you, you know, we talked about TV shows and our knowledge of things, or like when we held our first party together at Jones Creek and I decorated and got all kinds of fun stuff. Like, I feel like that was maybe done to impress you, that I was fun, because I think you thought I was kind of like very straight-laced and type A, but that I, you know, was trying to show you a fun side of myself. So maybe like little things like that.
Yeah.
That I think were within the parameter of who I really was.
Right.
Because I don't think I could keep up some sort of facade for long. And you know, if I tried to act like, you know, that I was this, like, I don't know, stellar athlete or something. I mean, you're going to soon find out I'm not a stellar athlete.
Right.
You know? But, or that if I, you know, going to be talking like, oh, I know tons of like things about banking and finance. I mean, I don't. But so I definitely feel like I just always try to impress people with just who I just generally was. Yeah. So,
well, I can tell you something that you did that immediately impressed me when we first met. Well, it's a good. I just said you impressed me,
but I'm scared because I don't know what it is.
It's a good thing. I wouldn't say it on the podcast if it was a bad thing,
okay.
And I wouldn't say you impressed me and then followed it up with I saw you murder someone.
Stop.
I saw you punch someone in the face. It was really awesome.
It was awesome.
No, what really impressed me right out of the gate was that like my friends immediately liked you.
Oh, okay.
I remember the first time you came over to my house, to my apartment, and my roommate and my upstairs neighbor, who was also one of my best friends, were sitting out in the living room, and you left my room, and I was like still in my room, and you're like, all right, I'm going to go. I'm going to leave. I'll see you later. I was like, okay. You were going to, I think you were leaving to go to the airport, and I think you were staying up like with me.
Yeah.
And
because
you were like,
I couldn't go to sleep at this point. Yeah.
And so you were like, okay, I'll see you later. I was like, okay. And about 5 minutes passed, and I heard your voice outside my bedroom, and so I walk out, and you're just standing there talking to Blake and Rick, and it had been like, I was like, oh hey, I was like, what's up?
You're still here? Get out.
And I did not say that, and did not think it. But yeah, it was just really funny that it was just like immediately. I was talking about Final Destination, I think, because you were going on a plane.
Yeah.
And I
think they were also watching a movie.
Yeah. And so it was just like immediately they were like, I like her. They were like, I like her. You know, there was, it was just immediately like my friends liked you. So to me, that was very impressive. I know it wasn't intentional, but.
And again, just being who
exactly.
I am. So I always think the danger in kind of your story is that you didn't smoke at the time, so you going to get cigarettes wasn't in your general purview of behavior. And so sometimes that to me is just a sign that it's going to flop because it's not who you are.
Exactly.
And so because you didn't smoke, she was like, where did you get these cigarettes? Whereas if you did smoke, she'd have been like, oh, thanks.
Right.
Like she wouldn't have asked you.
Right.
So it would have been probably cooler if you did, which of course you did later. But anyway.
Yeah. It was that same year.
Yeah.
All right. You want to get into the plot summary?
Let's do this.
All right. So this was 90 minutes long. It was very long.
I know.
And
like I'm looking at this summary.
I got about 4.5 pages of summary.
All
but
right, I'm going to just let you go. But we'll talk in between.
It moves. It moves so fast. It did not feel like 90 minutes.
It didn't.
And I was able to write this out from memory. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
we'll talk a little bit along the way.
I have a pretty good memory. So
you do.
All right, the Get Down pilot summary. We opened to a sold-out concert at Madison Square Garden in 1996. Rapper MC Books begins to rap about his humble beginnings growing up in the Bronx in the late 70s, where his rap career was born. We are now in the Bronx, 1977. Teenage Zeke is a poet with his head in the clouds. He lives with his Aunt Wanda and her boyfriend Leon in the South Bronx. Zeke is often at odds with Leon, so he spends most of his time either on the streets or at the Kipling house with his three best friends. Zeke is in love with Mylena Cruz, and even though it appears she has feelings for him, she is resistant because she looks at Zeke as a distraction. She comes from a very religious, conservative, strict family, but has big dreams of leaving the Bronx and becoming a famous singer like Donna Summer or Misty Holloway.
Aww.
Mylena has to keep her dreams a secret from her family, so Zeke helps her record a demo in her family's church, and she plans on going to lay disco with her best friends, Regina and Yolanda, and that's where DJ Malibu is playing, and she wants to give this demo to DJ Malibu in hopes of progressing her music career, which is just so amazing. That's how you self-promoted. That's how you promoted your music.
Yeah,
you
made your own.
You couldn't post it on
YouTube
or
TikTok
or iTunes and just it'd be popular.
I mean, and it's crazy that's how it is now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like how Justin Bieber got his start, and like many other people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Panic at the Disco was the first band to make it because of MySpace. They posted on MySpace, and yeah, that's what got them popular. I'm pretty sure that was them. So, Mylena's little sister catches the pair in the church and warns them that they are not allowed to record or sing secular music. Mylena knows that if her sister tells her father, she will be grounded and unable to spend the night at her friend's house, which will mean she can't go to LA Disco, meet DJ Malibu, and give him her demo. Mylena says she'll hand out the programs for that morning service so her sister doesn't have to. Mylena takes too long, so her little sister ends up having to hand out the programs, which leads to her tattling on Mylena. This causes an argument between Mylena and her parents, and her father grounds her, says she can't spend the night at her friend's house. Zeke meets up with his three best friends, the Kipling brothers, Dizzy, Rara, and Boo Boo. Mylena meets up with her two best friends, Regina and Yolanda. Yolanda is also a Kipling, sister of the three brothers. It's the last day of school, and everyone is excited for summer to begin. Mylena and the girls discuss their plans for the night. The girls suggest that she sneak out of her house, and they promise to be back before her parents wake up. Mylena's going to do this because she is determined to get her demo to Malibu, so she agrees. Later in English class, Miss Green announces the winner of the poetry contest, Zeke. Mylena seems very impressed, and his friends are proud of him, but of course other boys in the class start calling him names, making fun of him for writing poetry. His prize is a Hershey's chocolate bar, one of those big chocolate bars.
Oh, yeah.
But when Miss Green asks Zeke to read the poem in class, Zeke gets embarrassed and says he didn't write it and he copied it out of a poetry book. The bell rings and summer is now officially begun. Miss Green keeps Zeke after class, and he admits he lied and that he did write the poem, and he begins to recite the poem by heart, and it tells the story of how his parents died and a moment he experienced racism within his own race. The words cause Miss Green to turn away as she begins to cry. Before she can praise his poem, Zeke leaves the classroom. That was such a good scene.
Yeah, that was
like
really
when
good.
he just starts reciting it, and yeah. Dizzy skips school to hang out with his artist friends at a subway station when someone comes in saying that Shaolin Fantastic has tagged another wall. Shao is an elusive tagger known for his known for always wearing red Pumas and for always escaping the cops and gangs with his kung fu parkour moves, which parkour wasn't a name back then, but that was like the best way I could describe it.
Oh, yeah.
Dizzy greatly admires Shao and wants to see his newest artwork. The problem is, it's on the turf of the savage warlords. After school, Dizzy convinces the other boys to come out with him to see the artwork, and they reluctantly agree. Zeke is heartbroken over another one of Myleena's rejections, so Ra-Ra suggests he find a copy of Myleena's favorite song, a remix of Misty Holloway's Far, Far Away. Less than 50 copies were pressed on vinyl, but Ra-Ra insists he'll be able to find it. He convinces him to go find the record, go to Lay Disco, give the record to Malibu, and win the nightly dance contest with Myleena. A group of the warlords surround the boys when they find Shao's tag. Before things get too crazy, they are interrupted by Francisco Cruz, Myleena's uncle. They all scatter and run off, and Cisco and his assistant walk around the ruins of the South Bronx, and he has a vision of gentrifying the Bronx and making it an idyllic place to live. So at this point in time, New York City was this is late 70s. New York City was like kind of a war zone, where it was a lot of gang violence, a lot of real estate had just plummeted. So these building owners were paying gang members to set fire to all of these buildings so they can collect the insurance money. So it was like every day a building was on fire. So you go to certain areas of New York City and it's just ruins. I mean, it just looks like a place that had been like wiped out by like a nuclear blast. We see Shaolin Fantastic in view for the first time. He approaches a group of guys hanging out on the side of an apartment building, and he goes to one of the guys who refers to Shao as Grasshopper and says for his last task to prove he is worthy, he has to go to a specific vinyl store, retrieve him a copy of a hard-to-find remix of, guess what, Far, Far Away by Misty Holloway, the same record that Zeke is looking for. Before Shao leaves, his mentor reminds him that he needs to find his wordsmith. So Shao is obviously trying to start his own rap group, which was up and coming during this era of music history. And the wordsmith is basically just the guy who can freestyle rap off the top of his head. That's basically what that means. Okay. At the vinyl store, Zeke finds the copy first, but is interrupted by the savage warlords who are attempting to take over the record store. So I guess a common practice for these gangs was to go inside these businesses and kind of infiltrate themselves and be like, "We'll protect your store from other gangs, but you have to give us money."
Well, I think that's still done a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
While Zeke is distracted, Shao sees him holding a record and snatches it from him. The warlords recognize Shao and begin to chase him, as does Zeke. Through a series of obstacles, Shao finds himself on the roof of a high apartment building. When he jumps across to another roof, he makes it, but he drops the record and it falls directly into Zeke's hands.
Right.
Zeke runs off, but Shao sees his face. Myleena successfully sneaks out of her house and goes to Lay Disco with her friends. They are immediately noticed by Cadillac Caldwell, who is Regina King's husband in Watchmen, which we just did an episode of.
Yeah.
The club, he's Cadillac Caldwell. He's the club owner's son and self-proclaimed disco prince. Cadillac wins the nightly dance contest every night with a different girl, and when he sees Myleena, he thinks he has found his new dance partner. Myleena uses this as an opportunity to get to Malibu. Cadillac promises to give her demo to Malibu in exchange. I mean, he doesn't actually say, but he implies it in exchange for sex.
Oh yeah, it's very
like go to a hotel.
He's going after her.
Go to a hotel with me. He was like said something like that. Myleena snatches her demo back and says she's not like that and will find another way to get Malibu's attention. Cadillac is impressed with her ambition and self-confidence. Yeah, it's so weird. It's like you reject this guy and he's just like, oh, that's even hotter. Zeke puts on a suit owned by the Kipling brothers' dad and goes to Lay Disco with the record in hand. After being rejected by the bouncer, he is spotted by Shao. The two go around the corner and prepare to fight over the record. Zeke tells Shao why he can't give up the record. It's for the girl he loves. Zeke then begins his freestyle poetry, and Shao is impressed. Could he have found his wordsmith? Shao tells him that he'll get him in the club, get him to Malibu, and have him play the record for Myleena. The only thing Shao asks for is once everything is said and done, he gets the record so he can bring it back to his mentor. Zeke agrees, and Shao gets him in the club. DJ Malibu shows up for the show, and guess who it is? Billy Porter.
Billy Porter.
Whom we love. After much convincing, Malibu finally agrees to play the record. And that scene was really funny, too. Zeke approaches Mylena, and she's impressed. Her and Zeke begin to dance, which causes Cadillac to start a dance-off. Cadillac is clearly the better dancer, and through a very strategic group dance, Zeke gets cornered by some of Cadillac's guys while Cadillac dances with Mylena. But Mylena just sees this as an opportunity to get Malibu's attention. She is not interested in Cadillac in any other way. She thinks he's a skis, but she wants to get his attention. During all of this, the warlords are surrounding and taking over the club, shooting anyone that gets in the way. They finally make it to the disco club where Malibu is shot dead. Zeke and Mylena manage to escape. Unfortunately, the grand gesture isn't enough for Mylena, and she once again rejects Zeke. She admits that Zeke is a distraction, but it's more than that. Zeke is a brilliant writer, but he doesn't embrace it. Mylena was impressed that he won the poetry contest, but then when he denied that he wrote it, it reminded Mylena that Zeke doesn't try to better his life. Mylena returns home while a heartbroken Zeke goes to find his friends. Mylena is caught sneaking back in by her parents. They went through her room and found all of her secular music. Things get out of hand when Mylena's father begins to physically abuse her. Mylena's mother breaks it up, and Mylena locks herself in her bedroom. Zeke is hanging out with the Kipling brothers when Shao tracks him down and demands the record that Zeke swiped from the club, and demands the record back that Zeke swiped from the club just before he escaped. Zeke, no longer trying to impress Mylena, gives the record to Shao. The group follows Shao to a hip-hop party where they meet Shao's mentor, a Grandmaster Flash, played by Mamadou Athie.
Athie, yeah. The other Jurassic.
Oh, yeah, he's awesome. Oh, yeah, he was the assistant. Right. Yes. I forgot about that. If you don't know who Grandmaster Flash is, he is the pioneer for DJing and hip-hop. He invented the quick mix theory, which is the foundation of modern DJing. Zeke is captivated by everything going on at the party, listening to the music, seeing the break dancers, and watching the MC freestyle rap. Something awakens inside of Zeke. When the MC challenges anyone in the crowd to a rap battle, Zeke is convinced by Ra-Ra to go on stage. At first, Zeke buckles under pressure and can't think of anything to say. A fight begins to break out, and in the moment, Zeke grabs the mic back and starts to rhyme. The crowd loves it, and for the first time ever, Zeke feels the rush of being on stage and having a crowd cheer for him. We begin to hear MC Books rapping, serving as narration. We are back at his concert in 1996. The episode ends with MC Books rapping about this is just the beginning of his origin story, but he'll never forget that first night. We are led to believe that Zeke is actually MC Books.
End of
episode. I mean...
it was really good.
Good, yeah.
It was good because it visually was really amazing of just how it kind of took you around the Bronx and the city and on the streets, and you kind of saw the kids and their day to day. I do love all of the chasing for that dang record that was happening. We were just cracking up at what was happening, but it was great to see that chase and the houses. Because I don't know if I've talked a little bit about my family living in New York. My mom's uncle lived in Manhattan, and as did my aunt and uncle and a couple of my cousins. But my aunts lived in Queens, so we were out in Queens a lot. I had relatives that lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, so I had a lot of experience and travel to New York, New Jersey, and the outer boroughs. So seeing this was also just, it kind of took me back because that was the time that we went to New York was in the late 70s. So it was very reminiscent for me. So I loved it.
It's on Netflix. It's 11 episodes. I would highly recommend this to anyone. If you're a fan of music, if you're a fan of Baz Luhrmann, if you're a fan of any of these actors, if you're just a fan of a good TV show, it's 11 episodes. I mean, the episodes are pretty long, so it wouldn't be like a one-day type of binge. Yeah. It would be probably like a weekend. You could probably finish it in a weekend. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. And we're a couple episodes in, and I want to keep watching. And
we started.
I was immediately when we watched this episode, I immediately wanted to watch the second episode, and that doesn't happen that often, even when I really like a show. Yeah. I like to savor TV shows, which is probably to my detriment because we have so many TV shows that we have not finished.
I know.
But I like to savor them because we both grew up in an era of week by week, and it's week by week episodes, and it's really difficult for me just to binge an entire TV show. Like, it's really difficult for me because I want to savor it, but with these short-lived shows, they're so easy to watch in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Which for this I would definitely do. All right, you think that about wraps this one up?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that about wraps up this episode. Thanks for tuning in. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can follow us on Instagram at WeJudgePilotPod. We're also on Facebook. Leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or leave some emojis in the comments. You got a lot.
Well, some of these are my soundtracks.
Oh, I see now. Okay, I see now.
All right, so I have The Heart because this is coming out on Valentine's, but also because of Zeke and Mylena. The Disco Ball, any of the music emojis, like the notes, any of the musical instruments, the dancers because of the disco dancing, dance off. There's not a record, but I think there's a CD or like a DVD emoji.
There's not a record.
There's not. I looked. The jeans, any of the clothes that sort of represent like the 70s. I also have this in here, any of the dinosaurs, just for Mamadou and Justice Smith. The money and the cash, the art for the graffiti artist, the church, I said music, the sun for summer, the school, the big chocolate bar, the fire, and the cricket to represent the grasshopper.
Aww.
All right. Well, we're going to head out, but we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.
And also, happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.